All right, Rabbosai, good morning. Let us begin. So we are picking up. I want to share with you a really magnificent idea. I actually spoke about this a little bit this past Shabbos. We're continuing in the B'Ohr Ha'Chassidus page Yotes. Page Yotes, same sheet from yesterday. Footnote Chof Gimel. So he goes over here, Kedei Lahasbe, and it's actually very fitting in Meretz Hashem for tonight, for B'dikas Chometz. He says as follows, Kedei lahasbir yoser ma'amar zeh shel Beis Aaron. To explain a little bit more this statement of the Beis Aaron. Suppose remember again, yesterday we had the beautiful Beis Aaron. We spoke about the idea of hashar mevatlo balibo, ashtik hearts, right, is what the Beis Aaron said. So to explain this idea, nira lahasmich ma'aseh shehaya eitzla Rav HaKadosh Rabbi Yoshua mi Belz. So he quotes over here an episode that happened with the Belz Rebbe, Rabbi Yoshua of Belz. Shepam diktek belashon hamishna bepsachim, or la'arba'asar bot kines hachametz la'araner. So Rabbi Yoshua of Belz brought up the following issue: the opening Mishnah Maseches Pesachim, first Mishnah, little Chazara, or la'arba'asar bot kines hachametz. Literally again, on the night of the 14th, we go ahead and we check for chametz, bodkin es chametz, or really, literally translated, it means we check the chametz, la'or haner, by the light of the candle. And the Rebbe said as follows, so l'chora, eino muvan ma'idika amar bodkin es chametz. The truth is, it doesn't really make sense. The lashon of the Mishnah Bosai doesn't really read well. What do you mean, bodkin es chametz? We check the chametz. V'alo bodkin as habayis mina chametz shava. We'll say it's a good kasha, right? The Mishnah should really read either arla arba asar botkin bishvil chametz, right? Or also, if you're going to say botkin s, which means check the, it's not check the chametz, it's check or search the home. So why doesn't it say botkin s habayis? Check the home. Utvei avla meir botkin s habayis v'nishar b'kushya. So the Gemara says, So the Baruch writes, and he left this kasha. Bein Hashomim, Hayu Gam B'no Rav HaKadosh Rabbi Sachar Dov Mi Belz. So one time, so again, with this group who was listening to this kasha of Rabbi Yoshua of Belz, was the Belz Rebbe's son, Rabbi Sachar Dov of Belz. He said, Pam Be'ez Yeshivasam Chasid V'Anshe Maisa, Chazra Kushyas Aviv, so one time the son, Rabbi Sachar Dov, was sitting with some of the Hasidim of his father, of Rabbi Yoshua of Belz. They were going over this kasha, and Rabbi Sachar Dov gave a mashal. He gave a mashal to try to illustrate the answer to this question. Dome, l'shnei sochrim shenasu liyirid limkor schorasam be'ezliach Hashem darkam Shebizman katzar machru es hakol ubesimcha hechinu es sadeim lachzor lebeisa mukdom yoser mima shechashvu tchila. So here's the mashal: two merchants who were friends went out to the Yerid, went out to the fair. Fair is the wrong word, but went out to the market. And what happens? Baruch Hashem, they were incredibly successful. Thank God, took care of incredible sales or purchase, whatever they were doing. And Baruch Hashem, they realized a significant amount of profit in a shorter amount of time. So they decided now it's time to come home. Kevan shechein hichlitu lachzor ragli, kadei lachzok es demei schiras ha'agala. So what happens? So they decided also, because they met with expedited success, they decided, you know what? Let's walk back. We don't have to spend the money on hiring a wagon. We finished earlier than we thought. We have time to walk back. Good, and then begin their journey home. Kevan shekain. Mina machshava lemaisa yatzul derech besimcha liachar kama shaos his aifu. Meirov halicha ve'echlita lases tunuma la'afafeim umenucha la'atzmoseim. So what happened? So again, the two friends who Baruch Hashem are very successful in their business endeavors. Two friends, Baruch Hashem, now walking home on foot, become a little bit tired, and they decide to take a rest. Okay, miyad nisora eslam ha'she'ela heichon lahach bi'esra kasbam ve'bitu kol v'kol v'istaklu ana v'ana v'hiru ki'em ish ki'em eder shal paros ra'os b'afar Ubalei batuach nishkavu al hadesha ve'as tarmilam talu al echad ha'itzim. So what happened? They want to take a nap for a little bit. The problem, of course, is we have this Baruch Hashem bag of money. So where do we deposit our bag of money? So they look around and all they see are some cows grazing in the pasture. So they figure, okay, no one's around. They go out and they just hang their money bags on a tree and they lay down on the grass a little bit of a rest. Ach l'sochrim elu, last paragraph in the footnotes on page Yotes. Ach sochrim elu lo yadu velo evinu sheparos inon ro'os levadan basadamira. But they, shepherds, although apparently were good businessmen, were not really so the sharpest tools in the shed. And so they didn't realize that, cows don't generally graze by themselves. Where there's a cow, there's a shepherd, right? Where there's a cow, there's a human being who's watching over the flock somewhere close by. And what happened? V'hu ra'a heichan talosim. And sure enough, there was a shepherd. And the shepherd saw these two men napping in the field, and he saw their money bags hanging on the tree. Hanging on the tree. Va'achin kashera hala shenafal aleim tardema nigash ala tarmil upishpesh im yesh sham kasef umaraba haisa simchaso kasher matza shekola kis page chaf shekola kis molimos miyad pachaz alav yisro v'natal as hakesef liatzmo v'tachas hakesef mile es hatamil begilolim shalaparos kadei shlo yargishu v'kachas sochrim. So what happens? So the shepherd comes along, he goes and he empties the contents of the money bag. But the problem, of course, is now if the money bags are light, the merchants are going to discover what's happened. So instead, what does he do? He fills it up. Gilalim literally means manure, right? He filled it up with dried manure or whatever. He filled it up with rocks, right? He filled it up with something to give it weight. Ultimately, again, so that they shouldn't realize what happened. Fine. Tachboluso hitzlicha. The kasheris oru asochrim mishnasam. Samchu biraosam as tarmilam talui ala eitz. V'imshichu bedarkam besimcha. And sure enough, the plan worked. The shepherds wake up. They're rejuvenated, right? They're relaxed. They sit down on the ways. Baruch Hashem, the money bags are still there. And they go ahead. They lift it up. Don't even bother to open it up. They lift it up. Again, the weight is still there. Allah's git. They begin their way home. Ulam. Kasher paschos hatarmil. Chashchu eineihem bir osam es haglolim b'makom hakasef. Ve'bitu ze'al zeh betardema b'tamo. But what happens? Sure enough, they get home. They open up the money bags, and what do they find? Not money. Right? They find the manure inside their bags, and they look at each other and they say, what do they say to each other? Eich yitachin sha'paras higia l'rosh ha'ilan v'natlos tzra hakesef mile osa glolim. They went to themselves, how were the cows able to climb the tree in order to get to the money bags, empty out the contents, and replace it with the manure? What kind of cows were these? Mashura the cows who were able to get into the trees and go ahead and take our money. Ubisichlusam heftiru she'ein malasos shareas aparos efshar lisboa bedin Torah. And they say to themselves, you know what? What are we supposed to do? There's nothing for us to do. Because at the end of the day, what are we going to do? It's the cows. Obviously, it's the cows who did this. Because remember, again, we looked around. There are no people. There are no people anywhere to be found. So it must be that these are very special cows who are able to get into the trees and go ahead and take our money and replace it with manure. But what are we supposed to do? You can't call a cow to a din Torah, right? You can't call a cow in front of the Rav to go and adjudicate the case. So they go, and that was the end of the mashal. He says, "B'kach si maharid es dvarav ka'asher kal ma'aznav poris b'tzchok al tipshusam shal hasochrim v'lo avinu klal ma bein uvdazu lekashes mari." So this was the mashal that the son, Rabbi Yisachar Dov of Belz, had given. Remember again. So just remember all the characters. So remember again. The first individual, it was the first Belzer Rebbe, that was Rabbi Yoshua of Belz. Rabbi Yoshua of Belz was the one who asked the Kasha, why does it say Orla Arba'asar, Bodkin es HaChametz? It should say Orla Arba'asar, Bodkin es Hamatzah. I'm sorry, Bodkin es Abayis. Right? And then it was his son, Rabbi Yisachar Dov, who gave this mashal. So the Chassidim hear the mashal, they say, very cute, very cute. Listen to this. B'chol osazman, let's finish. B'chol osazman amad, b'narav HaKadosh Rabbi Aaron Mibels, min atzad v'hikshiv v'kovid rosh l'divrei aviv, u'b'tom dvarav hischil kol gufo lirod merov pachad. So assembled in the group of Hasidim who are listening to this mashal was the son of Rabbi Yisachar Dov, who was a Rav Aaron of Belz, and he heard his father's mashal, and he was overwhelmed with fear. U'l'shelas ha'chasidim masbir be'ema, shedvarim amukim u'temurim ganas aviv b'hai uvda. And Rav Aaron of Belz said that his father Rabbi Yisachar Dov had conveyed something incredibly profound in this mashal. Zihine, hasochrim nisharu bekushya machmas tipshusam. You see, the merchants in the mashal over here were stuck in their folly and their foolishness. If they had any little bit of seichel, hayosim in akushas tirutzim. Shaylo yitachin sha'paros yalu ala eith litol tzar kesef. Ve'imkein hayotzrichim lahasik shayasham roa shagazom hemes kaspam. See if the merchants had any wisdom in their mind, right? Any wit about them, so they would have realized cows can't climb trees. Cows can't climb trees. So if somebody went ahead, if something happened to the money, the only plausible explanation is that there was a person there. There was a person there. V'hachinami yored. So he says, and here's the nimshal. So I'll say, so obviously, what ends up the crazy part of the story is that the merchants themselves were so foolish that they could not think beyond what was right in front of them. All they saw in the field were cows, so they said it must have been cows who took the money. If it was cows who took the money, there's no way for us to go ahead and deal with that and litigate that or bring that to a din Torah. So listen to the nimshal. Bo says, "Quite frankly, we'll have to stop." V'hachinami yored basar adam la'olam hazeh im tar milzeh alev va'alav lemalos ba'avanim tovos umargolios. Bo said the nimshal is each of us come into this world, and we come into the world with an empty bag, right? That bag is the guf, that bag is the body. And it's my job to fill that bag with riches and jewels and precious stones. And that refers to Torah mitzvahs. That refers to Torah mitzvahs. Ulam, lepamim nirdam ha'adam al mishmarto, dum yodasochrim shenosnu tunum alaf apayim, ubisha'azu Merukan hayitzahara esalef ha'adam mikala rechush shetzibar b'tamilo. Umachnis tachtam gilalim elu chalas avonos v'tabas ros chason. And what happens? Sometimes in life I fall asleep on the job. I fall asleep. And what happens when I fall asleep? Sometimes when I'm not attentive to the way I live, how I live and what I do. So my bag, my personalistic bag, is emptied out of its kedusha and it's replaced with all kinds of negative, destructive things. Amnam, bahagia zmanim tovim, misora ha'adam mishnaso bodek es libo. But then good times happen, times of awakening. I wake up, and I have to inspect what's inside of my bag. I have to introspect what's inside of my bag. Sometimes I'm overwhelmed to find I don't have precious jewels of mitzvahs and personalistic spiritual accomplishment, but instead, maybe there's some stones, or maybe there's some impurity, maybe there's some manure. Ach b'makom livchon me'ein mekorim shel hagalalim kedei lahotzi ulahachzir li'atzmo es rechusho hu misya'ish umashlim imatzav hashafal. But sometimes when I open up my personal bag, and instead of finding spiritual treasure, I find negativity, right? I find the stones, I find the rocks, I find the manure. So I just accept it. Okay, this is what it is. Cows climbed the tree. And they went ahead and they emptied out my bag. He goes on and he says something so beautiful. He says, however, ulam, hamaskil mevin, shakushios hin asman haterutzim. V'yasik sheitzaharu hamaskilas adam be'ez tardumo kimam rachos. I'll tell you just the rest outside just because of time. So he explained, the Belz Rebbe explained so beautifully. You see, the sad part of the story is that the merchants, when they saw that they had lost the contents of their bag, when they saw that they had lost their money, right, their preciously acquired money, they just accepted it and they just moved on. So the nimshal, the message is that sometimes the bag, the guf, the life that I'm given, I'm supposed to fill with meaning, and I'm supposed to fill with kiddush, and I'm supposed to fill with holiness. And sometimes I introspect and I look inward and I realize I'm filling myself and I'm filling my life with all the wrong things. And the personalistic bag is filled with manure and filled with rocks. And when I see that, Sometimes I just accept it. I just accept it for what it is. What am I supposed to do? So says the kind of come full circle. So says the Belzer Rebbe, this is what the Tzaddik Rabbi Yeshua of Belz was saying. Ar la'arba'asar, on the night of the 14th, tonight, B'dikas Chametz. You would have thought that the Mishnah would have said, Bodkin es habayis. We go ahead and we check the home. But that's not what the Mishnah says. It says, Bodkin es hachametz. Why Rabbi was saying? Because we've spent our entire week focusing on this idea that the search for chametz really is the search for that which is broken inside of ourselves in an effort to expel and to expunge it. But there's a fundamental question I have to ask myself. How did the chametz get there? How did the personalistic chametz get there? How did I allow this chametz into my life? How did I allow this chametz into my heart? How did I fall into a state of disrepair? Because if I don't find the ability to answer that question, I may end up doing a wonderful cleaning tonight, but then I'm going to go to sleep. And it could be that when I wake up in Mirat Hashem, the chametz is going to be right back there. You see, part of a proper personalistic cleaning demands that not only do I go ahead and expel the chametz, but I try to figure out how it got there in the first place. What's going on in my life? What's going on in my lifestyle? What's going on in the way that I live that has allowed the chametz to permeate the bag, that has removed the jewels and the money and has replaced it with the manure and the stones? Says the Belzer Rebbe, that's the pshat. Arla arba'asar bodkin es hachametz doesn't mean on the night of the 14th we check for chametz. Because first of all, it would have said then, Arla arba'asar bodkin b'shvil chametz. Mishnah says, Arla arba'asar bodkin es hachametz means on the night of the 14th, we check to see how the chametz got into the home. So there's a duality to what we have to accomplish tonight. I have to search for chametz. I have to search for chametz in my home. I have to search for chametz in my heart. But searching for your chametz in your home, it doesn't really matter how it got there. You just got to get rid of it. But when we search for our personalistic chametz, just as important as finding it and expelling and purging it is the need to figure out how did it get there in the first place. We'll stop here.